Well, good morning once again. In the late 1800s, in the mountains of East Tennessee, there was a famous moonshiner known as Big Haley. The woman's real name was Mahala Mullins, but since she weighed somewhere around 500 pounds, Big Haley was not an inappropriate name. Big Haley and her sons ran a reliable operation. They were renowned for the quality of their product. They didn't dilute their moonshine, and they were known to deal honestly. That fact, coupled with the problems implicit in arresting a mountain clan, caused local government officials pretty much to leave them alone. However, that did not keep a newly elected sheriff from attempting to arrest Big Haley in order to make a name for himself. The judge who signed the arrest warrant just smiled at the new sheriff's ambition and told the sheriff to be sure to bring Big Haley in. The sheriff and his deputies had no trouble finding Big Haley's cabin. He knocked on the cabin door, entered, and informed her that she was under arrest. What he discovered, though, was that Big Haley was bigger than the cabin's doorway. After some futile effort, he decided not to arrest her after all. When the judge later asked the sheriff about Big Haley, the officer complained that, in the mountain vernacular, she's catchable, but not fetchable. Some things in life are like that, aren't they? They may be catchable, but they're not fetchable. Suppose you and I had never heard about Jesus Christ, but we wanted to know about the nature of God. How would we go about it? It's a problem. We could look at nature to draw our own conclusions, but nature presents a mixed bag. Nature has its positive side. There's the abundance of the soil and the faithfulness of the seasons. There's the warmth of the sun, as well as the life-giving rain. And there's beauty, breathtaking beauty everywhere. But there is also cruelty in nature, and destruction, and terror. Is that what God is like? I hope not. We could turn to sacred literature. All the world's great religions seek to describe God in high, exalted writings, but they're written by human beings, people like you and me. They may have been religious geniuses, but how can we know that their testimony is true? It's like that time-honored story of the little girl sitting in the corner drawing a picture of God. But no one knows how God looks, someone says to her. They will when I'm finished, she proclaims. And who's to say that she's wrong? Her guess is as good as anyone else's. If we all have to go on is human intuition. Truly, God is neither catchable nor fetchable. Can clay describe the potter? Can fish do justice to the one who changes the water in their aquarium? I can assure you they can't. How can tiny human brains that cannot produce a cure for the common cold ever hope to comprehend the wonder of the eternal Creator God? We can't. Fortunately, we don't have to. Why? Because God has come to us. As people in business world would say, that is the bottom line when it comes to Christmas. God has come to us. God came to a humble maiden in the obscure village of Nazareth, not to the philosophers, nor the Caesars, or to the mighty warlords, but to a humble maiden. How extraordinary. No wonder the cynical people of this world reject such talk as nonsense. Years ago, Time magazine reported on a 2-foot-long, 40-pound package that arrived at the post office in Troy, Michigan, addressed to a Michael Acorn. The post office phoned Acorn's wife, Margaret, who cheerfully went to accept it. As she drove the package back to her office in Detroit, she began to worry. The box was from a well-known mail-order house, but the sender, Edward Acorn, was unknown to Margaret and her husband, despite the identical last name. What if the thing was a bomb? Fearing the worst, Margaret telephoned postal authorities, and the bomb squad soon arrived with 8 squad cars and an armored truck. They took the suspected bomb in the armored truck to a remote tip of Belle Isle in the middle of the Detroit River. There, they wrapped detonating cord around the package, and as they say in the bomb business, opened it remotely. When the debris settled, all that was left intact was the factory warranty for the contents, a $450 stereo AM/FM receiver with a CD player. Now the only mystery was, who was Edward Acorn, and why did he send Michael and Margaret such a nice Christmas present? We live in a cynical age, an age of terrorists and corporate charlatans. Who can talk of angels and humble maidens and divine revelation in the same breath to such a generation? Yet on such a foundation does our faith rest. Samuel Lagerlöf, I guess it is. Samuel Lagerlöf, the Swedish novelist, once wrote a little volume that she called Christ Legends. One of the most beautiful of these is called The Wise Men's Well. In this legend, the wise men are drawn together by their common vision of a beautiful star that bids them seek a newborn king. They follow the star across desert and plain until it stands over a grotto in Bethlehem. But when they look into the grotto, they see only a young peasant woman and her husband with a newborn child. They turn away in disappointment. After they have gone some distance, however, they discover that they have lost the star, and with it the memory of where they have been. Then, overwhelmed with a sense of guilt, they know that they have allowed their earthly judgment to lead them astray. In their shattering remorse, they come upon an old well. It is a well that is known to the inhabitants for its brilliant reflections. They sink down in despair at its side until one of them, wishing to quench his thirst, suddenly finds in the depths of the well the reflected image of the lost star. Looking up to the sky, they rediscover the Star of Bethlehem, and thus they are led back to the grotto where they pay their homage to the newborn king. Marshall McLuhan said many years ago, "The medium is the message." There must be something starkly significant about the means God used to reveal himself. As we reduce Christmas in our time to an orgy of material satisfaction, let us consider what it means that the Messiah was born in some of the most deprived circumstances in this world. He came to a humble maiden in an obscure village called Nazareth. This humble maiden was told that she would bear a child. Well, nothing earth-shaking about that. Women bear children all the time. Yet this child would change the world. William Griffin tells the story beautifully in his book, Jesus for Children. "Stay where you are," said the young girl, "or I'll scream." "My name is Gabriel," said the tall stranger. "Are you an angel?" asked Mary. "I have a message for you," said Gabriel. "You shouldn't go about surprising people," said Mary, closing her book. "Angels are for surprises," said Gabriel. "I didn't know that," said Mary. "You are one of God's favorites," said Gabriel, "and he wants you to know that," Gabriel says. "Thank you for telling me," Mary replies. "And he wants to ask you a favor. He wants you to be the mother of his child, the child the scriptures speak of, the child that will save all the people of the world. Will you do God this favor?" "Does he have to ask?" Mary asks. "God always asks," says Gabriel. "He knows I read the scriptures, and I will do whatever he asks," Mary replies. "Blessed are you among women," said Gabriel, and the angel was gone. Yes, God did have to ask, thought Mary, as she returned to her book. And yes, she would never say no. The angel announced to her that she would have a child. God would not be content to communicate with his creation by satellite or by skywriting. He would actually become one of us. That is mind-boggling to me. Have you heard the story so many times that you have forgotten what it is saying? The manger of Bethlehem becomes the entry place for God to reveal himself in human flesh. That's deep. Too deep for many of us. Wade Burton tells about a man who was riding a bus from Chicago to Miami. He had a stopover in Atlanta. While he was sitting at a lunch counter, a woman came out of the ladies' restroom carrying a tiny baby. She asked the man, "Will you hold my baby for me? I left my purse in the restroom." He did. But as the woman neared the front door of the bus station, she darted out into the crowded street and was immediately lost in the crowd. The man couldn't believe his eyes. He rushed to the door to call the woman, but couldn't see her. What should he do? Put the baby down and run? When calmness settled in, he went to the Traveler's Aid booth, and they soon found the real mother. The woman who had left him holding the baby was not the baby's mother at all. She had taken the child, perhaps to satisfy a motherly urge to hold the child. The man breathed a sigh of relief when the real mother was found. After all, what was he to do with a baby? In a way, each of us is in the same situation as this gentleman. We are left with the same question. What will we do with the baby? Have we really come to terms with the fact that this baby is not simply an extraordinarily gifted, but that he himself is a gift from the heart of God? In his story, Cat's Cradle, the contemporary novelist Kurt Vonnegut Jr. shows a physicist who helped father the atomic bomb visiting his laboratory during the Christmas season. Office employees are all standing around a creche singing Christmas carols. The hopes and fears of all the years are met in thee tonight, they sing. In retelling this story, writer Philip Yancey asks, do the carolers really believe that the hopes and fears of all the years, which will vanish in a moment as someone presses the wrong button, rest on faith in a Bethlehem newborn, destined to live only 33 years? Yes, that is what we believe. The God of all creation came to a humble maiden in an obscure village called Nazareth and told her that she would bear a child. That child is the hope of the world, and that is the message of Christmas. What it says is this: power and possessions are fleeting, here today and gone tomorrow. Pride and pretense are tragedies. Only one thing matters. Only one thing is eternal, and that is relationships. That is what we're trying to say with our gaudy gifts. You matter to me. I love you. There is nothing in this world that is as important to me as you are. And we can say that to one another because an incomprehensible God said it first to us. On Christmas Day, a small manger scene sat on a table just inside the doorway of a neatly kept home. People hurried past it all day, barely noticing the tiny figures gathered around the infant tucked into the golden straw. In the morning, children raced by it on their way to the Christmas tree. At noon, arriving guests pushed past it, one accidentally knocking over a shepherd as he took off his winter coat. Later in the afternoon, a well-fed assembly of adults and children moved somewhat slowly by the manger again, as they drifted from the dining area back to the living room. Almost none of them stopped to look at the manger. In fact, none of them even noticed it, except two. An old woman walking with a cane paused in front of the scene. Gently, she put the shepherd back in an upright position. And then she looked at the child in the middle of the figurines. Presently, she became aware of a small grandson by her side. As voices drifted in from the living room, the two continued to look deeply on the scene. At length, a smile spread across the woman's face. The child took her hand. In the midst of a day filled with so much busyness, the two of them quietly received God's gift. God came to a humble maiden in an obscure village called Nazareth. An angel told her that she would bear a child, and that child would be the hope of the world. And he is. Will you please pray with me? Child of promise, come quickly to our broken world. Reshape our imaginations to expect your coming in new ways. in the small, the simple, and the vulnerable. During this final week of the Advent season, while we are in and out of holiday parties and shopping malls, hurriedly making final preparations for Christmas morning, reminding us again that your gift of love can never be earned through our own efforts, but only received, given by your gracious hand. Help us to become like your servant Mary, innocent and wide-eyed, full of expectation and wonder, courageous and faithful enough to let you come into the most intimate parts of our lives, to remake us in your own divine image from the inside out. O God, grant us grace to finish the journey to Bethlehem's stable and to welcome the Word made flesh, the gift of yourself in the tender flesh of a newborn child. Amen.